Somewhere deep inside, I had taken the boundaries off myself, letting the raw edges of who I was breathe. God, in His mercy, gave me the grace to live uncovered, yet under His covering, not because He withdrew it, but because He knew I needed to feel the wind against my skin to remember the warmth of His shelter. And so I was done with ever going back to a beautician, ever allowing anyone to touch my hair. That was it. Hello, I'm Dana. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I am back for another reading of my book, 7 Years to Surrender, My Journey to Faith. I am on chapter 9 today, Sink or Swim. This is the series where I'm reading through my book, 7 Years to Surrender, and then giving the backstory of each chapter. So I got this idea because, it just popped in my head actually. I wanted to read through my book and actually record it in just like an audio form. But then I decided to actually come on and make videos to read through my book and discuss it. So it's been an interesting journey thus far, but I'm enjoying it. Just having my book out here and still hearing testimonials, people that have read it and that resonated with it so strongly. It has been a humbling experience. It's hard to put into words because like you have some people that you expected to just support you, and then when they didn't, it was kind of like very insightful and revelatory. But then on the other hand, the testimonials have been so powerful that it balances out. But I'm still just excited about this journey and where it's taking me. So let's jump in and read. Chapter 9, Sink or Swim. After 5 years at One Big, I was let go in 2013. The truth, I was already emotionally checked out. The environment had changed. My favorite coworker, who had also become a close friend, had left the year before. I was trying to hold on, but the joy had gone. When they called me in and delivered the news, it felt more like a release than a rejection, and I told them as much. I started applying for new jobs. I was confident I'd lasted 5 years at Big Four firm, and they don't keep you around if you're not performing. But the longer I was unemployed, the more questions crept in. Did I really want to give the best of myself to another company that saw me as replaceable? Was this all life was supposed to be? I loved to travel, so I wondered if I could be a flight attendant. But what about turbulence? I wanted to feel financially secure, but not at the cost of my peace. I even toyed with the idea of starting my own company, but I wasn't quite ready. That's when I started asking a different question. What's my purpose? I didn't have the answer, but I knew I was being called to slow down and listen. 3 months passed. I had severance and unemployment, so I wasn't panicking yet. I had a couple of solid prospects, but still felt stuck. Then I decided to take a trip to clear my head and visit an old friend. Let's call him Baltimore. Now, how I met Baltimore is its own story. At the time, I was deep into juicing fruits, vegetables, green smoothies, and everything else. I followed a woman on YouTube who shared recipes and lifestyle tips. In one of her videos, she was being interviewed on a radio show. Baltimore was one of the hosts. I saw his face, heard his voice, and something clicked. So naturally, I did what any curious girl with an adventurous streak would do. I looked him up. Not in a scary way, more like a determined, slightly extra way. I found the radio station, dug up his info, and sent him an email. He responded that same day. He loved the boldness of it and said it was a ballsy move. That's how we started talking. Eventually, I flew out to visit him. We weren't in a relationship. We were just two people enjoying the vibe. We'd meet up a couple of times a year. He wasn't looking for a commitment, and neither was I. But he was captivating. He became a beautiful distraction. So I booked another visit before starting my new job. By the time I returned home, I had a new role waiting, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just chasing titles anymore. I wanted alignment. I wanted joy. I wanted to know who I was, not just what I could do. That move to Cincy was never just about a job. It was about me finally walking into my next. I surrendered my naivety. Stepping into my next felt like slipping into a forgotten version of myself, a version who trusted without borders, who remembered without fear. Somewhere deep inside, I had taken the boundaries off myself, letting the raw edges of who I was breathe. God, in His mercy, gave me the grace to live uncovered, yet under His covering. Not because He withdrew it, but because He knew I needed to feel the wind against my skin to remember the warmth of His shelter. I chose this life experience not out of rebellion, but to remember in a deeper way who He created me to be. So, the last chapter, I was talking about my move to Cincinnati, Ohio, and how it was just a complete leap of faith and something that was something I was excited about, but I didn't know, I had no clue how it was going to go. Never did I ever think that I was a risk taker, but this was definitely one of those risks. Uh, Granted, very educated risk. I had the job set up, but I didn't know how the job was going to go. So that's why this chapter is called Sink or Swim, because there was always the chance that it might not work out, and I knew I could always go back to my parents' house. Definitely not something that I wanted to do, but I knew if things didn't work out, I could do that. I think probably somewhere in my mind, I was going to make it work. So when I did the move to Cincinnati, I was working for one of the top four accounting firms. So I was excited about that, the opportunity, but even that, working in corporate accounting, I didn't know how it was going to go. So it was a new job, it was a new state, like all of the newness of it all. It was a perfect storm for it possibly not working out. The funny thing too, when I had went down to look for my apartment before I moved, what helped me in the end, and I didn't choose my apartment based off of this, but the street that you got off of the highway on was called Dana. And so the fact that my apartment was like right off of Dana, it wasn't on Dana Street, but the fact that that was like when I got there and I was thinking how even that was like a sign, the sign of the universe, just like showing me that light, that affirmation, that confirmation that I was in the right place. And the area, I loved the area that I found my apartment in. I just jumped in, and like I said, I didn't know I was a risk taker, and I was just figuring everything out. Thank goodness I had the GPS, but I was exploring the whole city. Every weekend I would think, okay, what do I want to do? So I would ride somewhere, I would pull up a location, maybe someplace to eat. And so I would drive there, and then that would, like, just driving there would give me other ideas of areas where I wanted to check out. So I did that and I just continued to explore. Just everything was in exploration. And I'm sure I was talking to my coworker who is now my friend. And she was giving me suggestions of different places too to go. And we would visit and we would hang out and she would tell me about the different parks. So I started exploring the parks and going for walks. The parks alone. When I think of Cincinnati, and this probably sounds weird, but when I think about my experience and my time in Cincinnati, I automatically think of the parks. And they had some beautiful parks and they were free. And these parks I would visit probably, I'm sure every weekend, I would visit a different park. They had Eden Park, which is ironically the park that Tim and I got married at. And the fact that it was called Eden Park was just like really the fact that like we had made a full circle when we reconnected. Did I already talk about that? No. I'm forgetting where I am in the book, but I'm probably stepping ahead because it's automatic in my head to think about my whole story, my whole journey. But yeah, we reconnected, and I was living in Cincinnati. And when we decided to get married, we were going back and forth of where to get married at. And it's a whole story behind it, and I'll get into it later, I think in another chapter. We had the opportunity to have a ceremony in Cincinnati. So that's where we got married at Eden Park. So that was one of my favorite parks. Beautiful park. I would go there all the time and just walk the streets and walk the park. It was connected to this neighborhood called Mount Adams. And I would sometimes walk through Mount Adams and the surrounding areas of the park. I love the hills of Cincinnati. Another park was Alt Park. They had another park downtown Cincinnati. That was another beautiful park right off the river. Yeah, so they had several parks that I just loved. Uh, I just I just loved exploring that city, and then the fact that it was kind of a middle place for a lot of weekend getaways. Like they had Louisville, Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, Indianapolis, Indiana was close by. Columbus, Ohio was close by. Dayton, Ohio. So it was a lot of places where I could just get away for a weekend. So it was a perfect spot. And then my job, I was learning so much at my job and meeting different people, having so many different experiences that I had never had. And it was exciting. It was so exciting. And it was just like this new life that I was creating every day, every week, month by month. And I ended up being there for 8 years. I was working for the Big Four accounting company for 5 years. And I think year four, my coworker ended up, well, she had gotten married. I'm not sure what year she got married, but she got married and then she got pregnant. And so she was always, I think, planning to leave, be a stay at home mom. And so after she left, a lot of things were changing even before she left. There was a lot of change in the company, within the company. But then after she left, things really shifted. And I just really started losing interest with all of the different dynamics with some of the partners that I had to work with because a lot of the partners I was saved from having to work with them since my coworker was more experienced. She had those partners. Some of them were very difficult, as you can imagine, and I ended up with them. And so even besides that, there was just different changes happening and I had lost interest. I had lost my excitement for the company, and then it was pulling so much out of me. And then when you feel like you're putting so much into a company and then you realize this is not brain surgery. Like we're not saving lives, but they're still expecting you to give your life to them. I was over that. So, yeah, I can go down the list of all of the different things that were happening during that time. But besides that, I was still making the best of that time, still living, still having those experiences. I discovered horse parks down in Kentucky, and that was fun to just go to the horse parks on a weekend, go down to Louisville or Lexington and explore those areas. I was just exploring, just gaining so many different experiences. I didn't really meet any guys down there. I didn't really have anyone that I was interested at work or at church for whatever reason, but it was fine. I still enjoyed my time just being single. Like I like to say, I mastered being single because I went out to eat by myself. I went to the movies whenever I wanted, like everything. And so I went natural in 2012. I had had an experience with a beauty school. I had let them do braid extensions on my hair. And even before that, like I had a relaxer, and it was actually a huge challenge to find someone to do my hair, to like just do a relaxer. There were several beauty salons, but they were all white beauticians. And so I was just kind of leery of having someone white to actually put a relaxer on my hair because it's a little tricky. And I would even ask people at my church, like if they had a beautician, and I really couldn't nail down any beautician. And so at one point, I just decided to relax my own hair. So I went down that route. And so it was going fine, even though I didn't quite know exactly what I was doing and I didn't want to over process my hair. So that was a tricky thing. If you know about relaxers, you know. And so I was doing my relaxers on my own hair for I don't know how many months, several months. And then I remember getting this one relaxer and it looked runnier than normal, but I went ahead and used it. And I think that's where things shifted. And so I think my hair started breaking off. I can't remember everything, but I think my hair started breaking off. But that's always a possibility with getting relaxers anyway. So I was trying to deal with it the best I could. And then I decided to get braid extensions. I had gotten braid extensions maybe once before from a place in Dayton. So I drove like an hour away to get braid extensions because I couldn't find anyone in my local area to do braid extensions. And I wanted braid extensions. I was going out of town. I just wanted a break from my hair. I didn't want to have to think about doing my hair. So I got braid extensions, which was something that I did all the time in Michigan. That was the biggest thing that I noticed from Michigan to Ohio is the amount of beauticians. Black beauticians are like almost on every corner in Michigan. And so I found this one place that was maybe 30 minutes from my house after I had the bad relaxer experience. I found this beauty school that could do braid extensions. So I went there and there were several girls on my hair and they were braiding my hair and it was taking forever. I was so ready to go. I was so over it. And then the girls, one of them had to leave because it was something she had to go to. They didn't accurately estimate the time it was going to take. Very traumatic experience. They didn't finish it that day. I had to go back and have them finish my hair. And then when I went back, it was still a disaster because I don't know if the same girl showed up or not, but they started putting glue in my hair and they weren't braiding my hair down past my actual hair, but they were trying to get it done and they started putting glue in my hair. And I know there's hair glue and that comes out and I was hoping that that's that's what they were using, but they were actually putting super glue in my hair. And when I went to go try and take it out, I had to cut off a lot of my hair. And so I was done with ever going back to a beautician, ever allowing anyone to touch my hair. That was it. and rightfully so. So I managed to get the extensions out, and my hair was uneven, and I had to just basically make a decision of what I wanted to do. At that time, everyone was going natural. Everyone in the Black community were growing their hair out natural in its natural state. And so I started watching videos and I started thinking of what I wanted to do with my hair because I knew I didn't want anyone else touching my hair. And because I had went through that experience and I was trying to figure it out, it was just kind of like that point where one, I wasn't going to let anyone else touch my hair. And then two, it was like almost like how bad can it get? It was like I might as well try something different, try something drastic. So it was in between me cutting my hair off or wearing a wig, which I had never done. I had never been one to wear wigs. Basically, I was thinking I would just go back to natural because I actually straightened my hair myself with a pressing comb up until my senior year of high school. And I think also another reason why I decided to go natural after that traumatic experience, I believe I had watched Chris Rock's movie Good Hair during that time. I didn't know that I was shifting even watching that movie, but I think that had something to do with my decision as well. So I was just basically going to go back to pressing my hair. And that's actually what I did for the first few weeks of actually wearing my hair out in its natural state. I kept straightening it with heat. I got a piece for my ponytail so I could like camouflage the broken part. And so I wore my hair in basically a ponytail with my bang. And before I just stepped out and wore my hair out in its natural state. So I was watching these videos over a period of time before I did my first twist out or braid out. I had planned it, washed my hair over the weekend, tried to get a style in my head, but I couldn't really do a trial run because with natural hair, you have to let it air dry or sit under a dryer. And I don't think I had a dryer at that time. And so it was Monday morning and I was thinking about wearing the style that I had saw on a video and I didn't know how it was going to look on me. So that Monday, I had to just wing it. It didn't go how I had planned. I knew I didn't feel confident in it, but I had to wing it. I had to basically rock it. And I did that a lot of times where I would have a style planned and it didn't go as planned. And I had to rock it like I was confident in it. And even like when the style did turn out, sometimes the heat would destroy it, the humidity, whatever. It was a whole challenge. In this chapter, I'm talking about sinking or swimming. A lot of it had to do with my hair, my natural hair, and having to figure out everything during this time period of making this new place work. And so during that time of going natural, I started juicing because that was another thing I just fell into where people were juicing fruits and vegetables. So I got on that trend because I wanted to get healthier. So that was another experience. So I remember having this one juicing machine, and then I think I elevated to a more expensive juicer, and I actually loved it. I loved that experience of juicing because I felt like I was really feeding myself. And I would get up on the weekends on Saturday and I would go down to the farmers market. They had this market in downtown, near downtown Cincinnati, called Finley Market. I would go down there and get my fruits and vegetables for the week, and it was just so much fun. Like even that was an experience of just going to the farmers market because that was something that I had never done. Just picking out my fruits and vegetables and then going home and watching videos of different recipes to make for different things. And that was a whole experience, finding recipes, finding juices that I really enjoyed drinking. So everything was just about exploring. like I said, I found this lady on YouTube. She was being interviewed by a radio show, and I saw the guy, one of the guys interviewing her, who I call Baltimore in the book because he lived in Baltimore. Once again, I didn't know I was a risk taker. But when I look over my life, I realized that it didn't start when I moved to Cincinnati. The way I would write a letter, like I wasn't a talker and I called myself shy, but I had power in the pen because I would write a letter. My mom used to tell me of a letter that I wrote her years ago. I think I was 12 or something. Like I was upset with her and I wanted my own room. And I still don't know exactly what all I said in that letter, but I guess it was in a way, I guess it was a mean letter. I had a way with getting my thoughts across when I wrote, even though I didn't have the boldness to actually speak and say these words face to face, I would definitely put them on paper and share what I felt. So I decided to write Baltimore a letter and send him an email and just whatever happened. And like I said, he responded the same day. I mean, letters work. So yeah, so that started off this situationship with him. I remember I was natural at that time, and we had talked for several weeks, and he was interested in seeing me. And so I flew out to see him, and it was an experience. It was fun. It was another adventure in my book. And we would see each other maybe once or twice a year. As time went on, he wasn't someone that I saw myself with long term. It was what it was. And so when I lost my job in 2013, I happened to just be talking to him during that time after I lost my job. I was probably just out there for a day or two. And that was just kind of like the reset that I needed before I stepped into my new job. But I realized during this time, 2013, when I really started questioning my purpose, that's really when the shift happened. When you start asking what your purpose is, the universe has its way of getting you in alignment with your path and your purpose. It didn't come all at once, but just the fact that I started rethinking everything, what was going to really fulfill me. So the juicing was part of it. I realized that when I went natural was also a huge part of it because I was getting back to my roots, my hair. I don't know when I realized how spiritual hair was, but I now know definitely that's when I really started getting back to who I was and who I was called to be, because I was literally getting back to my roots, the roots of my hair. And I'm going to dive into that at some point, what our hair really means. When I tell you I love Cincinnati, of course, I'm in a different place now. So I know Cincinnati wouldn't be the same if we were to move there, but Cincinnati holds such a place in my heart. I could probably write a whole book about my life just in Cincinnati. It allowed me to be me. It was a beautiful rebirth. I kept swimming. I didn't sink. I kept swimming. So that is chapter 9. And like I said, the other previous chapters are below. You can check those out. My book, 7 Years to Surrender, is available on Etsy, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.